This video is my reaction to the Ravens' 30-16 win over the Bears. They took advantage of their final home game for the next month at least by handling Chicago. Very efficient, sharp play from Tyler Huntley. I think he finished 17 of 22. He also added 53 yards rushing. The timely 30-yard scramble was pretty amazing. I think it comes on a second and long when Chicago's bringing heavy pressure, and Falele did a really nice job of taking someone down, kind of opening up a lane. I don't think it was designed for Huntley to run. I just think that Falele was defending that interior gap and stepped down with significant strength, if you ask me. The end zone angle from the broadcast showed it to us, and it opened the lane wide up for Huntley, who took off. I thought his presence, Huntley's presence, really kind of, compared to our other backup quarterback, right? It expanded the playbook for Todd Monken. We also got, the critical turnover by Nate Wiggins that helped us create separation and really hold on for the second win of the year. I thought Wiggins was matched up often with Rome Odunze. Now, Odunze did have 7 catches on 10 targets, over 100 yards. But that was a huge play from Nate Wiggins. The interception, about 9 minutes, a little bit more than 9 minutes left in the game. Chasing Odunze across the field, left to right for the offense, right to left for the defense, and then cutting underneath the throw. Tried to tightrope along the sideline. The defense, I thought, played a similar brand to what we saw against the Rams. And I think Kyle Hamilton is the biggest part of that. Kyle Hamilton as the dedicated nickel DB in what looks to me to be a nickel response to pretty much everything. And Chicago took advantage of it a couple of times with the run game, but things have been different. That move is the game changer, in my opinion, for the defense so far until we get, 2 or 3 or 4 quarters in a row where it doesn't work, regardless of who's out there at outside corner, almost regardless of who's out there at inside linebacker. Kyle Hamilton moved up to the line, basically set to the field, has been a huge game changer for Zach Dorr's defense. We got 8 quarters, and now we've given up 33 points over those 8 quarters against the Rams and the Rams and then the Bears. And regardless of what we think about the Bears, coming in 4-2, the Rams and the Bears have both won more football games than they've lost. And in 8 quarters against them, we have been able to hold them down from the scoreboard standpoint. Chicago definitely generated more yards than the Rams, right? Courtesy of, you had the big catch by DJ Moore late in the game, I think for 42 yards. Phenomenal, one-handed snag up the right side. Other than that play, and look, Marlowe and Kyle Van Noy have an opportunity for a sack where they hit Williams or Marlon hit Williams just after the throw. The Ravens allowed, if you were to exclude that play, 330 yards on 61 plays. So that's 5.4 per play. Chicago finished at 6 yards per play, because obviously you do have to include it, but I'm trying to provide some context. I think we played a really good brand of defense, or a good enough brand of defense, I should say, for the second game in a row. And then, of course, we were able to hold Chicago 3 times inside the red zone. The 2 field goals in the first quarter, and then that goal line stand down there inside of the 5-yard line that, allowed us to take over at the 1. Tyler Huntley take a quarterback sneak/knee to finish it off with less than 1 minute to play. In my observation, just off first watch, I think both coordinators, Zach Orr and Todd Monken, did a much better a job of not just coming in with a good game plan to attack the Bears, but also adjusting during the game. Roquan had 12 tackles. Kyle Hamilton had 8, as well as, I think, 1 quarterback hit and maybe another pressure. Hamilton. The one that was important was he caused the grounding penalty on Williams in the second quarter. I think that caused a longer field goal attempt, and that falls short. That allowed us to take a 10-6 lead in the half. Critical moment, if you ask me. I think the brand of defense has been better since Hamilton's moved up, which is very ironic because last year, a lot of people, myself included, think it was him moving back to be one of the 2 deep safeties that really caused the switch. Mike Green got his first sack today. That was during a time period when Chicago was in control. They absolutely dominated the first quarter, but they couldn't punch a touchdown in, and they only had a 6-0 lead to show for it. I think a lot of the first down runs with Derrick Henry are being short-circuited. I'm not sure, what the answer is globally. We're of course, are going to have to run the ball sometimes on 1st and 10, but to me, I wonder about some play-action opportunities there, because Chicago did a great job. I seem to remember at least 6 different 1st and 10 runs by Henry, either going for 1 or 2 yards. And having said that, Henry finished with the 2 touchdowns on 21 carries, only 71 yards total. One thing to mention on the 2 short yardage goal line touchdowns, is they're both to the outside. One of them by design is an outside zone concept that Henry just kind of bounces. I don't know about you, I would have loved to have seen an outside zone concept against the Rams late in the second quarter for Henry. Something that he's spectacular at, knowing whether to hit it downhill, kind of cut it back or wind it back, or bounce it outside like he did in this case for a touchdown. The other one was a power play that really got stacked up, and then he bounces it to the outside after getting hit and almost kind of going backwards to do so. Keaton Mitchell had a huge burst. I want to talk about that a little bit here. There's a lot to be happy about. We got to win. His stats in the end, right, are offensively don't look like much. 4 carries for 43 yards. He did have the 2 kick returns for 66. So you're talking about 6 touches today, over 100 yards. Now, of course, only the 4 carries counts on the offensive side. It makes me confused and frustrated, to be honest with you, in that he only had 3 carries before today's win, and that was in the loss to the Texans. He was inactive for multiple games. The reason or justification from Harbaugh was he doesn't play on special teams. I mean, we heard from so many people in training camp about how dominant he was, how impressive. Ken from Film Study Ravens even said, he's been the best player in training camp. And in the preseason, we got confirmation there. He was spectacular in the limited times or limited exposure we saw of Mitchell in the preseason. I get it that overall we were all fed a line of bullshit from training camp by the media. Well, actually, multiple lines in terms of how good the defense was. But that one, Mitchell clearly has a lot of ability. He can change the game with 1 touch. That first pin pull pitch, it's in the third quarter. I think it's a 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8. Nobody on our roster, including Lamar, gets the corner in that way. No one. Mitchell has to get touches, to me. Let's just for a moment pretend or operate as if Lamar is not going to play on Thursday. For this offense to get close to its ceiling without Lamar, Mitchell's got to get touches. He does. To me, he's a special talent, and it's a borderline unconscionable, indefensible position to say that he doesn't have the talent to get opportunities. They sat him, didn't make him active. Today, he's suddenly getting the ball in the fourth quarter when we're up 16-13. We have Derrick Henry, who we're paying a significant amount of money for. It just seems to be so difficult to justify that he's not on the field. He's inactive for multiple weeks. And then this week, he's getting the ball after it's the possession before Wiggins' interception, right? It's a sequence basically that leads to the Wiggins pick, I should say. Mitchell's got the ball twice on that possession. Remember we faced the 3rd and 5. The Bears brought pressure. They nearly get an interception, I think by Biard. It's tipped by Tremaine Edmonds, who only had 3 tackles today, which is shocking because he came into the game with 60 really active. Anyway, I think it's just a huge amount of confusion being put out there by John Harbaugh, and I have to point it out. I believe, like I said, that he had 3 touches in the fourth quarter today, he being Mitchell, after supposedly not being worthy of being made active instead of Rasheen Ali, and now they're both out there returning kicks. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm glad we won, and I'm going to remain positive after this little diatribe. But given Mitchell's ability to change the game with 1 touch, I'm struggling to move past that. I'm struggling to say that there's any reason he shouldn't have 22 to 25 touches at this point, where we are now after 7 games, meaning cumulative, over the first 6 games coming into today and then after today. Increasingly, I get it that we should remain positive and just be happy for a win. We've got another game 5 days later. I just find myself struggling to support that decision from John Harbaugh. Having said that, like I said, I'll reiterate, Orr and Monken, they were solid today. They had a good game plan. Have to give credit to the Bears for hanging in and then getting to within 16-13. I do want to talk about after the short field goal from Loop, sneaks inside the right upright in the third quarter and makes it 16-6. The Bears answered, and I'll cover these 3 plays in a film study video at some point this week where Ben Johnson is matched up against Zach Orr in critical situations. And we're just outcoached there in those 3 moments. Zach Orr did a great job today in holding them to 16 points overall. And I think it's part of the learning process for Zach Orr in handling some of those moments. So I'm going to talk about them. 3rd and 6 on the Bears' next possession after we go up 16-6. It's from the negative 39-yard line, and they go bunch to the right. It's basically a flood concept. I think Nate Wiggins and Starks are in no-win situations. They're not in position to succeed because of the routes that the Bears run. So it's a really nice play call by them. I think it's formational awareness for us and the ability to adapt or alter the call to basically help us even up the math over there where they have 3 receivers. Marlon, Wiggins, and Starks ended up being matched up with their 3 receivers, and the design of the flood concept, I think, prevented Starks from making a good decision. He really is in a spot where he has to take the first route that shows, and then Odunze ends up a huge reception for 27 yards. It's 16-6 at that point. I feel like if we're in a better position, or if we put our guys in a better position, we have an opportunity to get a stop there and really put them away. Same possession, and this one frustrates me a little more because no one's on the back. It's the same possession again after we go up by 10 in the third quarter. 3rd and 6, and they're in 11 personnel, 4 wide receivers. Well, 3 receivers and a tight end, but they're spread out in what I refer to as a flex formation, but some people just call spread. And it's a screen to DeAndre Swift. There's no one on the back. There's no one assigned to the back, all right, guys? It's not like there's someone assigned to the back and he gets blocked. Whoever is assigned to the back, it looks like the glitch blitz to me is really what I think I see there, where the 2 D tackles are stepping to the offensive lineman and then retreating to get into the hook to curl, low hole passing drop area. But Caleb Williams did a nice job of checking into that screen, in my opinion. We never know what was said in the quarterback to head coach or offensive coordinator microphone in the helmet. So the only thing we can go off of is something that was built into the game plan or possibly communicated to Caleb Williams in the huddle, and they did a great job. It ends up going for 25 yards, 2 third-down situations, chances to get off the field. Well, actually, they're on our 30-yard line on that 3rd and 6, so, possibly a long field goal or maybe going for it on a 4th and 6 if that screen or any other play concept doesn't work. And then finally on that same drive, the 3rd and goal from the 2, they go 11 personnel. This is after they had gone with 12 personnel, and Hummel came in at inside linebacker. Just a great run read. Smacked the running back in the mouth. I think Hamilton finishes him off. 2 plays later, it's 3rd and goal from the 2. And they go 11 personnel and run the ball right at our nickel defense. And it was easy. Actually, I say Swift got in just before his knee went down. But increasingly in some of those 2nd and long situations or even 3rd and short, teams are going 11 personnel, running it against our nickel. And it seems pretty simple to me to be able to get us blocked up. And in this case, Swift gets in so they can pull within 16-13. What followed was, an awesome job by the defense, specifically Nate Wiggins. The Bears' drive had bridged the 3rd and 4th quarter, right? And they're able to get to within 3. It was 11 plays, 83 yards. Mitchell, on the ensuing kick return, busts a 40-yarder. I think technically it goes down to 39. We're unable to get into the end zone. We basically line up on a 4th and 5 and then try to draw them off sides, end up punting, when it became obvious to everyone that they were not going to jump. I do want to talk about the situation and how it occurred because Wiggins' interception is great, right? It's a turnover, number 1, that our defense has been struggling to get. Number 2, Wiggins is playing at a really high level, in my opinion. He's battling against some really high-level receivers, Odunze this week and Devontae Adams 2 weeks ago. I think one portion of that sequence that is perhaps missed is Tylan Wallace on the ensuing punt catches it inside the 5. I think he catches it at the 4. It almost looked like the 3 to me, right? It's an amazing play by Wiggins. Get the interception back to our offense. Our offense turns it into a 23-10 lead, right? It's a really nice call by Todd Monken to put us up. 22 personnel, I think it's 2nd down. Kolar leaks from the right side to the left. I believe it's Jaquan Brisker who doesn't cover him, really wide open. Huntley's throw maybe a foot low, but Kolar easily handles it, gets into the end zone. So we go back up by 10. But that catch from Wallace, man, underrated dude. He didn't get opportunities today. I think 1 catch on the left side, maybe a screen. For him to catch that and not give the ball an opportunity, obviously, to bounce into the end zone or do anything else, bounce sideways, bounce backwards, that's a huge play that is a part of that whole sequence, in my opinion. The Wiggins pick occurs a couple of plays later. I just think Tylan Wallace continues to be one of those guys that when we need him to make a play, He often shows up at just the right moment. And I think, this is just another example of it. We actually almost got another interception on what I think is just a great play from Marlon Humphrey. I think Marlon takes the ball from 14. Well, he knocks the ball out and then takes the ball when they're on their back. It just didn't look like 14 ever had control to me. I guess, the refs ruled differently, right? They didn't really say much. It was about as short of an explanation for a play that was very difficult to understand. I guess their ruling is that it's completed pass with forward progress and Marlon stops forward progress. I guess they're saying it's not a forced fumble, which actually Marlon doesn't have a forced fumble on his ledger for this game, so clearly they're not. They don't have, 14 Zacchaeus with a fumble in the game. It just makes me wonder, like, if Marlon knocks it out and the ball pops up in the air and hits the ground first, then how do they rule? Do they call it an incomplete pass? I guess they call it a completed pass and forward progress stopped. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think the referee's explanation or lack thereof, there's no depth. There's no solid attempt he's not trying to be thorough at all. I thought those guys were battling for the ball after the contact. And to me, the flow of the play, if Zacchaeus puts the ball on the ground, that should be a fumble. But in any case, they ruled forward progress. It's implausible to me, that explanation. Even though in slow motion, it makes it even more difficult for me to understand that determination. I just didn't think Zacchaeus had possession after the initial hit. Zacchaeus could have bounced off Marlon and then, gotten some more yards. Increasingly, I just don't really understand what the refs are doing, nor the justification for it. In any case, that allowed Chicago to obviously retain possession. They go down to get a field goal and get within 23-16. So I'll talk about the Ravens' ensuing drive. Again, this is after Chicago closes to 23-16 in a drive that bridged the third and the fourth quarter. So clutch stuff. First of all, the 3rd and 7, the completion to Hopkins. Great trust from Huntley, obviously for Hopkins to catch the football in a one-on-one against Wright. He's clearly physically stronger than Wright. He's got a better understanding of how to, get his arms extended, create some separation. We see stuff like that, all the time. I did like the first play, the attempt to use Henry. The first play of this drive, 1st and 10, play action to Henry. I think it's out of the shotgun. I actually missed the formation. As you can tell, it's blank up at the top. And I have it complete to Flowers for a good game, but I put 0 in there. Should have been 6 off to the right side. I really liked the play. And then the very next snap is building off of a fast sweep motion that we used to Flowers multiple times in this game. So I'm pleased to see the same formation and motion presented multiple times. In this case, it worked out on the 2nd and 4. Henry was barely, I think he runs into the back of maybe Falele or Rosengarten. I think it's Falele. And then a little bit of a second effort gets the first down. We end up with a 3rd and 7. And the completion to Hopkins generates 15 yards. At this point in time, J.J. Watt, I hadn't really noticed him a lot. He says, you should get out of bounds. We're just trying to get the first down, brother. We're just trying to get the first down and maintain possession of the ball, not give it back to their offense. And then he says the same thing on Mitchell's run, which is a badass concept. QB counter read, which we very rarely give the ball to the running back. For you guys, it's the 5th play from the bottom, 1st and 10 with about 3:18 left as the ball is snapped. Yeah, we'd like to get out of bounds there, JJ. Of course, Keaton Mitchell's trying to score. Like Keaton Mitchell, he doesn't exist with the same set of parameters as every other human being. In fact, most of them in the NFL. He can sneak around the side and be gone. We saw it in 2023. Unfortunately, we didn't last year, obviously because of injury. I just don't get it. To me, it demonstrates a lack of awareness by J.J. Watt. But I get it. Some of you will say, hey, I think Mitchell should try to get down. I want him to try to score because that's what he does. The very next play, he's got a pretty decent gain off the right side. I think it's like 5 or 6 yards, and then they get a penalty. So it adds on the 5 yards to it, which is interesting to me because you can see we went from the 38 to the 25 on his first 13-yard run, and then a 5-yard penalty, which apparently we accepted to create the 1st and 5. What I will say is for Mitchell to get the ball 3 times in a row, inside of 4 minutes in the fourth quarter, it's just crazy to me that he has that kind of talent, and we want to get him the ball because he demonstrated the ability to make plays. 25-yard run earlier in the game, 13-yard run here on this possession. For a guy who was apparently, not good enough to be active for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks. Doesn't make sense to me. I love the 1st and 10 call from their 13-yard line. And I think Henry's in the game. It's 22 personnel. Second play from the bottom for you guys. It's QB keep, basically a bootleg action, but Stanley is looping around in front. We've used this play multiple times with Lamar. This is the one where Huntley keeps it and tries to basically run someone over around the 4 or the 3-yard line. It's ruled down at the 3, ends up being a 10-yard gain. The only part of this that I don't like, I really love that play call. Using Henry's gravity and also Stanley's athleticism to get him out in front. So I love the play call, the concept, the willingness to do so with Tyler Huntley. The only thing I don't like is the only receiver on the field here is Zay Flowers. I'd like to have our best blocking wide receiver in here, Tylan Wallace. That's the guy that I would trust out there to get a block on the corner so that Huntley doesn't have to try and run him over. I could be wrong. Maybe it wasn't the corner. He tried to run over. And then the ensuing snap, 1st and goal from the 3, is Henry bouncing off of a defender. It's a power play, so the left guard of Voorhees is pulling. I think Ricard is in to lead. Henry ends up stacked up, like in the B gap, C gap, and then ends up bouncing it outside, getting to the far pylon for a touchdown. Now, I do want to complain a little bit here about Watt and his commentary. It was almost like he was barely able to conceal his own rooting interest. Later on the next couple of possessions, or next possession, I should say, for the Bears, he's reacting to the catch by DJ Moore for 40 yards. He's like, get out of bounds, get out of bounds. DJ Moore's trying to score, dude. He almost sounded like a fan, like someone like I would, reacting to it. And then on this drive, which is why I'm still leaving this up on the screen, this 8th possession where we go up 30-16, right around the time that Mitchell on the 1st and 5 gets 2 yards, he starts talking about the 3rd and 7 conversion to Hopkins. And it was very weird to me. Even to the extent where they bring the ref on after the QB keep by Huntley with 3:02 left. I may have my plays incorrect here, but there's a lot that he could be talking about here. He could be talking about Stanley coming back in the game because Stanley was back in for this whole drive, all right? And then if I am correct that he began discussing or continued to discuss it after the QB bootleg, the first thing I noticed was, wow, Stanley obviously hurt earlier, dealing with injuries throughout this year anyway, and they're calling a play for him to get out in front, and he does so and does a great job behind, oh, by the way, our backup quarterback. He could have talked about that. Also, maybe J.J. Watt could have talked about, I don't know, our 3rd-string running back, been unused, only 3 carries so far this year, getting 3 consecutive opportunities for the football instead of Derrick Henry. To me, no, let's go back 4 or 5 plays ago and talk about a 3rd down pass play where Hopkins may or may not have pushed off. Fine. He overpowered a smaller, thinner corner in right, who's actually a good football player. I like him. I just don't understand those. It's also possible that some of the announcers are told to focus on certain things by the production crew, right? In their earpiece, that perhaps they're told to do so. But for me, it's a Ravens game. The Ravens are 1-5, finally winning. Opportunity to close out the contest with the ball in an attempt to finish off a Bears team that's 4-2. And Tyler Huntley and Keaton Mitchell generate 2 first downs in a row. Not Lamar Jackson, not Derrick Henry, not any of our wide receivers after the catch by Hopkins, that is. And J.J. Watt spends time breaking that down, which was 3 or 4 or even 5 plays ago. I don't know. I just think it's a good idea to talk about what's actually happening in front of us at the time. In any case, Henry punches it in, a 3-yard TD, and puts us up 30-16. It is obviously a really great finish. It wouldn't be a Ravens game at all, but specifically in 2025 if there wasn't as much drama as possible. They get down to the 1-yard line after, a spectacular catch by DJ Moore. Like I said, I couldn't believe that Watt was calling for him to get out of bounds. While the play is happening, then even on the completion to Duvernay, which was kind of ironic to see him making catches down there in the end zone, Watt's like, oh no, as soon as the ball is caught when Kyle Hamilton makes the tackle. Just, I don't know. I'm sure there's people who gobble up anything presented on television as, oh, it's not a big deal. But to me, we just seem to have the lowest standard for live commentary for a lot of these NFL games. Give me a guy like Charles Davis any day of the week He's better than all of them because he's balanced and he reacts like an actual journalist. In any case, we got the stop down there late in the fourth quarter. Thankfully, it was a great play by Caleb Williams to get the ball to Moore, and an even better catch by him. He only had 4 catches on the day. Interestingly, they put him in the backfield a lot, and I didn't think that was very productive, meaning the run plays with DJ Moore. But getting our first win of this week, step 1 is mission accomplished. And then the step 2 is hopefully to go down there in Miami and get another one. I think that a lot of credit has to go to Orr and Todd Monken. We only finished 4 of 10 on third downs, but we had the one fourth down conversion. I think it's a 4th and 2, in fact, on our third possession to take a 10-6 lead, where Huntley kind of goes out to his left like a semi-roll situation and fires the ball out in front of Zay Flowers, running a little flat concept. Zay just needs to get out of bounds or get upfield. Just take the first down. He almost tries to juke back underneath of it. But in any case, I think we turned the tables on the Bears after that first quarter, where they're up 6-0. It's completely one-sided. They had ran 22 plays to our 3. Second quarter, we got pressure a couple of times on Caleb Williams, and then the missed field goal late. I thought that the 2 grounding penalties on Williams were huge. He was in sync today with Odunze, right? 7 catches for him, 114. And Odunze had come in with a relatively inefficient catch percentage for 2025. Look, I don't know if you know, he had 24 catches coming in on 46 targets. So that's 52%, or maybe technically 53. He went 7 of 10 today, no touchdowns. DJ Moore, 4 catches on 7 targets. So in all, Chicago generated 372 yards. They weren't able to generate running yards consistently after the first quarter. I think Orr and the defense have their philosophy, which is, some refer to it as big nickel, with Hamilton as the nickel DB, the 7th man in the box. And they did a good overall job of taking away or limiting the run as much as possible and being sound against the pass. It would sure help, right? If Green, Kyle Van Noy, Hamilton with occasional blitzes could get to the quarterback. Green had the 1 sack, I think, on the first possession, and then a key pressure on the second drive. Wiggins finished with 7 tackles, I think 1 TFL, there it is on your screen, and then the interception. I thought Marlon was very active, could have been credited with an interception or even a forced fumble. Like I said, I still don't understand that call. It seems to me like Orr and the defensive staff have figured some things out about what they want to do, who they want to play in certain positions, and we seem to be less haphazard, or maybe less random, I should say, from a play-to-play basis in terms of what we're calling. It's very interesting to me that last year, the answer was moving Kyle Hamilton back to safety and basically playing Marlon as the nickel. And then, once again, those 2 guys are part of the solution, at least what appears to be a workable solution right now in the last 2 games, but only in reverse, right? Like a domino effect, or a chain, if you will. Hamilton moving forward as the nickel, and that kind of pushes Marlon out to outside. With Jair not playing at all, Awuzie came back from injury. This right now seems to be working, at least for me. I have to admit that. I think that Orr and the staff have done a good job 2 weeks in a row. Will the Dolphins be able to attack it, specifically to the boundary, because they'll know that Hamilton won't be to the boundary? We're certainly, less athletic at the back-end safety position with Starks and Gilman, as opposed to having Hamilton back there. Boundary side coverage, to me, is a key factor. If we can be sound against boundary side throws and boundary side run plays, then I think we've got a great opportunity to play this brand of defense consistently moving forward. On the offensive side, we put up 355 total yards. That's the most since the Week 4 loss in Kansas City. Huntley was sacked twice. We had 2 negative plays in empty that I just don't like those play calls at all. Not with this offensive line. They, to me, empty. When you remove any chance of us running at all, which of course like a 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, okay, fine. But the 2 times I saw us go empty that I documented, the Bears rushed 4-man pressure and they got pressure immediately. We're just not that type of offensive line, in my opinion, to be able to line up in empty and be successful. Overall, Henry and Mitchell combined for, I think, 116 rushing yards. Huntley had 53 as well. That was a huge contribution. That's the scramble in the third quarter. That one was, I think, a swing moment. It's a 2nd and 9. The Bears bring heavy pressure. Again, I think it's Falele, collapses someone down. Huge gap opens up for Huntley. I don't think it's a designed run. I think it's legitimately just a scramble against a heavy pressure look. And that 2nd and 9, of course, is not third down, but it generates 30 yards for us, immediately puts us into field goal range, which we capitalize on, 16-6, right, early in the third quarter. That was like an 8 or 9 play drive to open the third quarter, I should say. Takes 5 or 6 minutes off the clock. And when you look at that situation, combine it with the late second quarter, right, the field goal that we get there, our last possession of the second quarter, and then the grounding on Caleb Williams that leads to a longer field goal attempt by, I think it's Los Santos or Santos. We didn't double up. We didn't score 2 touchdowns, but it combined to help give us a 10-point lead where it was only 7-6 at the beginning. Those were huge sequences. I thought Caleb Williams was good today. Had the great throw to DJ Moore, had a couple of strikes to Odunze down the field. Did he outplay Huntley? I don't know, and I really don't care. Huntley did what he needed to do. He was efficient. He only had one play that really, I guess, could go down as being turnover worthy. It's the tip passed by Edmonds on the heavy blitz that Bayard nearly catches, or Bayard, however you pronounce his name, in the third quarter. Great decision to get Huntley in there compared to Rush. My thing would be, I have to reflect on this. I don't know if you do. Kind of similar to Keaton Mitchell. Why did it take so long? I have no idea what happens on Thursday, right? Lamar walking around on the sideline looked pretty comfortable to me. Running and reacting to contact is obviously drastically different. There's a part of me that thinks, okay, if the Ravens can get through Thursday without using Lamar, he's got an extended break for the next 3 games, the next 2 road games, right? I think it's at Minnesota and then at the Browns. I don't really care which one it is. I will say this. I don't know if I trust the people in charge of making that decision to actually do so. And here's what I mean. I have to comment on the fact that he apparently is out there with our scout team offense on Friday, even though he wasn't healthy enough to play. Simply put, there's just no justification. We'll try it 2 different ways. There's no reason for him to be out there with the actual scout team, which is 11-on-11 time period, unless we're just presenting the formations and the defense is lining up to the formations, and or someone is talking about the coverages that we might run. Oftentimes in a scout team situation, you may not have the defensive line. You may not even have the offensive line. That's not scout team, actually. That's just like formation review and maybe some pass plays off of it. If he's healthy, he shouldn't be over there with the scout team. There's just no justification for it. The reality is most people actually don't know what the scout team is. It's a dedicated time period where there's a group of practice squad players and maybe some backups, and they're presenting a look to simulate the opponent's offense, right? The Chicago Bears. It's scripted. You've got situations, you got formations, specific guys located in certain spots. For example, like Devontae Adams. He would be in like a blue jersey. So everyone knows how to match up. And if Wiggins is going with Adams, then he just goes wherever the guy in the blue jersey goes. Puka Nacua would be in maybe yellow or orange, like pennies, okay? If Lamar's over there trying to simulate Caleb Williams, how do you justify that? If he's recovering from injury, if he's not healthy enough to play, there's no reason to act like that's a sound decision. If he's just over there, my guess is he's just throwing routes against the starting defense with zero threat of an oncoming pass rush. You don't, basically that would be like Pascali or 7-on-7. If Lamar is over there on Friday and he's actually lining up under center behind the scout team offensive line, the scout team offensive line, there's a couple of jokes that you could say there that he's been doing that already during 2025. My point is there's just no way to justify that from a coaching standpoint. I can't imagine that someone like a Todd Monken or a T. Martin wouldn't stand up and say, no, get him off the field. Let's kind of reflect on the first half a little bit. I've already reviewed a lot of the important possessions. The Ravens were up 10-6 at the half. They had the short touchdown run from Henry on the outside zone concept. Really glad to see Monken call that down inside the 5. Huntley to that point was 11 of 12 passing, 110 yards. I think the one incompletion was even a throw that was to Zay on maybe a third down and just outside of his reach. Zay had 6 catches for 57 yards. We were only 2 of 5 on third downs, but the critical fourth down conversion on the 4th and 2, with the first and second quarter being diametrically opposed to one another. The Bears controlled the first quarter completely with their 2 possessions. We only ran 3 plays. Thankfully, Mike Green got a sack to force them into a field goal, and then also had a pressure on their second drive on a second down to help them have to settle for another field goal, this one from outside the red zone. Huntley had the pair of third down conversions, like I said, including a one that I think should be mentioned. It's a 2nd and 22, really nice catch by Bateman. It's just on the other side of the 50 when the ball is snapped. And Bateman goes down to get it on a ball that Huntley put down low, maybe intentionally, maybe because the defender was there. That one went for 15 yards. Like I said, it was on a 2nd and 22, and then Flowers converted the 3rd and 7, barely, or maybe twice. He kind of retreated. He seems to do this often. And you have to trust his instincts to a certain degree, but however, having said that, on third down, get the first down. We don't need you to get 30 yards here and go back all the way across the field. He didn't try to do that. It looked to me like a defensive end for the Bears dropped out in the hook area, like a zone blitz. Huntley gets the ball to him quickly. Again, it's a 3rd and 7, and Flowers catches it, jukes underneath of that defensive end, and then regains the first down as he's being tackled. That was the drive where Henry had 5 carries, 26 yards. I think one of them for 10 yards, maybe one of them for 8, including, like I said, the 1st and goal, there was an outside zone concept. There's a part of me that reflects back on that late second quarter sequence against the Rams where we go for it on 4th down, don't get it. First down, let's get a carry to Henry on outside zone, or 2nd down, something, meaning we can execute that concept, specifically to our left. I don't know how long Ronnie Stanley was out of this game today. We know he was out for a while. It was tough to watch him be down. It seemed to me like there was a 2 or 3 possession streak in a row, or consecutive possessions, where we didn't run outside zone at all. I think that's a reliable thing that it seems like we can execute. In any case, I was glad Monken went to it in that situation. We'd been outplayed in the first quarter, and Henry bounces that one outside, and all of a sudden we're up 7-6. Huntley also converted a 3rd and 2 during the second quarter. It looked like a Lamar special. It was like an option keep is on our next drive. Option keep, and he ends up behind the tight end. And I think this illustrates plays that Monken can't call with Cooper Rush in the game. Basically, we've used this for many years with Lamar, with Monken, I should say, here at the same time as Lamar. Oftentimes it's a dual read, or what I refer to as a dual read. In this case, I don't think it was. I think the tight end just looped or arced released outside, but I could be wrong. But like I said, we can't operate with Rush at quarterback, running that play on a 3rd and 2. We were able to get a really nice stop, a quick stop, 3 and out in the second quarter, where there was this weird play with DJ Moore in the backfield for Chicago, and they ran the ball. Our D tackles, and then Roquan stacked it up. Roquan had a spectacular play on a 2nd and 10. It's after that failed run by DJ Moore on 1st down, and the ball's near midfield, in fact, where basically Caleb Williams drops back to pass. Multiple receivers, get downfield. I don't know the depth of the routes. And then it's a delayed screen, but a kind of interesting timing on it to Swift. And Roquan takes a great angle underneath of the offensive lineman and a tackle that really, if Swift gets away from him in the middle of the field, I think we got problems. And that led to one of the blitzes by Kyle Hamilton. This one was sick. It's the design pick on an offensive lineman. Sometimes it's the center, sometimes it's a guard. I thought it was the guard here, but I don't exactly remember the end zone angle. Anyway, I think Hamilton's designed to pick an offensive lineman, and really he ends up just clean. It's the play where they call a grounding on Caleb Williams late in the second quarter, and I think this is critical to illustrate, number one, how fortunate we were here, but it was also a really good call by Orr, but the difference of having Hamilton up front versus having him on the back end. And here's what I mean. I don't think any of our inside linebackers this year or in previous seasons make the play that Hamilton does here. Basically, we're trying to pick an offensive lineman. A running back sometimes will move in our direction. Patrick Queen was great at this, right? Queen was one of the best I've seen on that stunt from anyone across the NFL. But Queen or anyone trying to execute is often caught in confusion. Like, hey, I'm supposed to pick off this offensive lineman, but I'm wide open here. There's a lane. What do? I've got to execute my job. I've something I'm tasked with executing, but here's a lane. Because of Hamilton's increased ability, this is my opinion, you're welcome to have a different one. because of his increased agility, I should say, and his burst, right, his closing speed, he's able to get to Williams, I think, a step sooner than any of our inside linebackers. Simpson, Buchanan, Roquan, if they were put in the same position. And I think that kind of illustrates the potential that's there for Hamilton being lined up closer to the line. In this case, I think it was a second down, pushed them really far back because it was incomplete, and it was a loss of 10 yards. So they had to punt, and then we go down and get the field goal to make it 10-6. So Hamilton's impact, to me, while it's only 8 tackles, there's no interceptions, no forced fumbles for him, he's a huge presence up front, almost like a hybrid linebacker / cover corner. I just don't think there's too many Kyle Hamiltons in the league. Seattle fans think they have one in Nick Emanwari, and from a size and athleticism standpoint, that fits. But he's very dynamic in adjusting during the play. And that adjustment, I thought, was critical in forcing Williams into a bad decision. We only had 3 possessions in the first half. The game moved so quickly. We were even in first downs, 10 apiece, while the Bears had outgained us. Our run game had only managed 44 yards on 12 carries, and Henry didn't really get unlocked, I think, globally. I think we're kind of capped there by our offensive line. Conversely, Chicago did finish, I think, 23 carries for 96 yards. They had the big scramble from Williams, but in the first half, they only had 8 carries for 36 yards, and one of those was a scramble attempt from Williams. So interesting to me that they didn't come in with this consistency of attacking with the run game, even though they possessed the ball for long stretches in the first quarter. I think I'd like to talk about some individual players. Wiggins, I think, is playing as good a corner as I get to watch. He's traveling with guys at times, moving from one side to the other, so that's a little different from the way we typically do things, which is right and left. He's oftentimes ending up into the boundary, so that means he's ending up on the same side as the will linebacker, whether that's Simpson. It seemed like to me Buchanan was in there a lot today. I think Wiggins is playing exceptionally well, even though, of course, Odunze did end up with 7 catches. Hamilton moving down, I would really like to, in a film study video, look at his alignment, his usage. That'll probably be something that EA and I will try to cover for Inside the Coverage on Wednesday. Gilman, to me, looks like he's been integrated completely at this point, and him and Starks look like they're on the same page. Mitchell, I already gave you my thoughts on him. I think he's a special talent, and he can impact the game. We also have him at a very low salary point. In my opinion, we should use him. And when I say that, I think we should be using him in the first half, not just waiting until later on in the game. I think that Derrick Henry is still the same guy he was in 2024. This offensive line is clearly not progressed, at least to this point, in run blocking consistency or in pass pro. I don't care. Mitchell can change the game. He can change the tone with one snap. And it seems obvious to me that we've mismanaged that to a degree. If we're on the right track now, wonderful, great. I'll move on. And I'm sure that some of you have as well. It still makes me question our decision-making and why we make certain guys active and certain guys not. Tyler Huntley, to have him available, first of all, what are the chances that actually occurs when we're 1-5? Absolutely need a win to kick off or lead into 3 consecutive road games over a 3-week period. And Tyler Huntley, a guy who's been there for this franchise after being a UDFA from Utah, we're able to lean into him. No disrespect to Cooper Rush, but if Cooper Rush were out there making some of the same plays that Huntley did today, I don't think it brings the same fervor or juice from the Ravens fans that are in the stadium, nor would it from me watching. Just because of Tyler Huntley, the connection that we have with him. Of course, we lost the playoff game because of his fumble down in Cincinnati. Still played his ass off that night, and he did today. So I'm glad that we had him. We were able to use him and could obviously rely on him again Thursday if they choose not to play Lamar. Monken and Orr both deserve credit. The game plans they had, solid. The red zone defense for Orr and his group, that'll certainly be a video I'd like to focus on. The 2 stops in the first quarter to hold the Bears to field goals, critical in a time period when they're in control and our offense, only had the ball 3 snaps. And then the stop there late in the fourth quarter to close things out. It was really fitting that the defense made a stop there. I know we're up by 14 and the game effectively is really over there unless they're able to score and then get an onside kick. You never know with this Ravens team and a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter. It was a fun game to watch. Forgive me if you feel like I'm being too critical about the Mitchell decision. There aren't too many Keaton Mitchells around, and I don't know who knows how long Keaton Mitchell has in this league. I think he's a special talent and someone that's we're fortunate to have, and we should use him. In any case, you guys are welcome to let me know what you think of my description or my complaint about that whole process and my assessment of the game overall and some of the things I chose to focus on here. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number one. Number two, if you think other Ravens fans would like to hear some of my thoughts on how they were able to get a 30-16 win that leads into our Thursday night trip down to Miami, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.